Today I'm going to make a soup using veggies left over on a party tray. I'm also going to use a couple of pieces of bacon. I start by cutting up the bacon just into chunks so that way it can fry up in a pan. When I'm adding stuff to the pan, I like to use the hole in the cutting board because this prevents anything splashing up on me. Next, I chop down the onion. Everything I'm just going to do a rough chop. It doesn't have to be perfect because at the end, everything's going to get thrown into a blender and pureed. So the size doesn't really matter. Just make sure it's kind of relatively the same size. So that way everything cooks down at the same time and you're not waiting on one thing to still cook. I decided to add some potatoes to help thicken it and give it a little bit of flavor. If you wanted to go more of a potato soup route, you could add more potatoes. I have a lot of celery that I wanted to use up, so I was going more for the celery type of soup, but you can do whatever you have on hand. It doesn't really matter. If you wanted to do more of a potato soup, I would suggest doing some of the potatoes in, as well as some of the potatoes chunked up and added to the soup after the fact. Once I get all of my vegetables in, I go in with a low sodium chicken broth, and then I fill the can about halfway with water and add that in, salt and pepper to taste. Next, I just let it boil down, and I'm just checking to see how soft the vegetables are. You just keep going until you think that they're soft enough so that way you can puree them and not have chunks or lumps. I'm going to blend this in batches so that way I don't overcrowd my blender, and that way I make sure that everything gets blended smoothly. Once everything is blended, I determine if I need to add a little bit more broth. In this case, I did just because I wanted it to be a little bit more soupy. Not too much though, because I am adding half and half cream to make it even more creamy. Once that's all blended, I put it back into the pot because I'm going to put this back onto the stove for a little bit. Back on the stove, I add a little bit more salt and pepper to taste. I did decide to add potato gnocchi to my soup. You can add the potato chunks like I mentioned earlier, or pasta. Whatever you prefer is totally fine. Once finished, I did decide to top mine with some crispy bacon chunks. And there we are, all finished.